Welcome to Sitting with Sally. I have today with me the Minister of Parliament for Kenora Riding, Bob Nault. Welcome and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Sallie.
So before we started the show, you were talking about a signing ceremony that recently happened.
Well, we just had a signing ceremony lately talking about healthcare and about the importance of a relationship between our First Nations in the Kenora area. And this signing ceremony is all about building the coalition that we're going to need to develop an all-nations hospital, all-nations healthcare system. So that's a very important first step, at least from the traditional perspective, and getting both Canada and Ontario as governments used to the idea that we're looking for a new process to develop healthcare here in the north, one that's northern, one that meets our needs and brings healthcare into 21st century. So that being my top priority, Sallie, I was very pleased to be at the signing ceremony and looking forward to moving in the direction that all folks from Kenora and in the north want, which is a good healthcare system.
It sounds like a really big deal and very exciting.
It's a big deal in that we all know that healthcare is a long way back from being where we need it to be. We're struggling with recruiting physicians. We have a very old hospital. We don't have long-term care for elders, for seniors. Seniors facilities are weak if we're being polite. At best, we have a long way to go. And then we have also been struggling with going to Winnipeg, which is generally where a lot of us have gone for specialty testing and things like that. So that discussion has been going on with the two premiers to develop an agreement so we can continue to use the healthcare facilities in the Manitoba area. So we're progressing, we're getting there, but if you ask the average citizen here in Kenora and in the area, they would say that it's still not very good, so we got a lot of work to do.
A lot of waiting times for a lot of things, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the healthcare, I think, that we had talked about earlier was mental health, and that's another area that you're focusing on.
Well, one of the things I noticed when I came back for what I call my second tour of public duty is that the healthcare system really does need to catch up with the needs of Canadians, with the need of Northerners. One of them is mental health. Mental health is becoming a very large issue for us as Canadians. 1 in 5 Canadians are telling us that they've had mental health issues. And in our region, as you know, we've got a suicide epidemic in the north. We need to deal with that, and mental health programming is a big part of that. So one of the things we're looking for from our governments, both provincial and federal, is to renew our healthcare system, whether we're talking about mental health, whether we're talking about home care, because we want more seniors and people with disabilities to stay in their home, or whether we're talking about pharmacare. Those are all things that people expect of us to improve and something that hasn't really been focused on over the last decade, and we're trying to move on that. And I'm very optimistic that our government and the Ontario government get the message and are going to move forward on it.
And it's always complicated because it's federal and provincial have to work together to move forward.
Well, on a number of these very important matters for Canadians and Northerners is the jurisdictional issues sometimes get in the way and create these little roadblocks. And I think we have to find solutions to make sure that that's not the excuse. We're not in the business of saying, well, that's provincial, that's not my job, or vice versa. Our job, of course, as elected officials is to get the job done. And so I think that's hopefully the message that we're sending with the All Nations Hospital, with the new relationship with the Kenora Chiefs Advisory, and with the municipalities, working very closely with Jerry O'Leary in Sulikout and Esther Falls, working very closely with Mayor Canfield. Need to work closer still with Manaki and Reddit and some of the smaller communities to make sure that we put together a healthcare system that meets all of our needs, and that's why I see that as our top priority.
On your website, you put out a weekly letter, which I looked at a few. One of them I noticed that Veterans Office is going to be opening up in Thunder Bay again.
Well, one of the commitments and platform commitments that we made as a government that we were going to, of course, try and do a better job by our veterans, and one of those was to reopen the offices that were being closed by the previous government. And our closest office, of course, for some of the riding is Thunder Bay. Funny enough, I've been asking Veterans Affairs and the Minister if we can also allow our veterans to use the Veterans Affairs office in Winnipeg, because it's closer for some of the vets here in the Kenora area. So we're making progress on that, but there's still a long way to go on the veteran side as well, because we've committed to help them with better pensions, and we've also committed to make sure that they have better healthcare facilities as well. And I think it's true that when we sometimes forget that we have a lot of young veterans who've come back from recent wars that we've been involved in, whether it's Afghanistan or Kosovo, and now we're looking to potentially send some of our troops into Latvia as part of a program dealing with our issues with Russia and being a big partner in NATO. So we're going to have a very vibrant structure and system to help our veterans, and the office in Thunder Bay is just the beginning of that.
And again, the mental health is very important, because I think we're becoming much more aware of post-traumatic stress for many veterans that have served.
Well, again, we go back to we're learning more about our bodies and our minds, and mental health is a topic that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you touched on, but you really didn't get into. It's the same thing in sports, the kind of healthcare talking about PSD, the whole issue of concussions and the things that happen to your brain. Well, that is certainly a reason for us to be heavily involved with our vets, and obviously revamping healthcare on the mental health side.
So you've been back as our Member of Parliament for just about a year and a half now. I'm wondering how you feel, having taken time off, how it's different from last time?
Well, I think politics changes and has changed. One thing I've noticed here in the region, and which is a positive thing, is the new relationship that seems to be forged between the Aboriginal leadership, the Aboriginal communities, and the non-Native community. And I think that's partially because of a number of things. Young people and their families, a lot of First Nations citizens are moving into the small cities and towns in our riding. And so we're living with each other now, not just passing each other on the way to the grocery store and then back out to our communities. And that's changed our relationship. I think the government's interest in reconciliation and the process of fairness to First Nations is helping as well. And in Northern Ontario, with the fastest growing population being Indigenous, I think it's important that we do have a relationship like that. That's one thing I've noticed dramatically that's changed. The other thing I don't talk much about is I think the bureaucracy has changed somewhat. The expectations by the bureaucracy is that members of Parliament won't be as actively involved in files as they used to be. It was expected in the 80s and 90s, when your constituent came to see you, you as a member of Parliament would get right into the file. It's changed a little bit that way, and I'm not sure that's a positive thing, because Canadians and Northerners expect their member of Parliament to be very active. Overall, I think the riding has stood still a bit. I was hoping when I came back from a retirement that I took that the region would have all-weather roads all the way up north. We still don't. I was hoping that there would be grids and no more diesel-generated plants up north. We still haven't accomplished that, but that's in the works, I hope. I mean, those are the
water treatment, I'm sure.
And water treatment, of course, is one that I think the minister is within days of announcing. Some more water treatment plants for this coming summer. So we're making progress, and I think those are the obvious changes. And here's something I tell all Southerners about the North, that they talk about immigration. Well, we have a large outmigration from the far north into our communities here in the south. And so Kenora's population has changed, Dryden's population has changed, Sioux Lookout's population continues to change. That necessitates different discussions, whether it's on housing, on homelessness, healthcare, job creation, all those areas are very important when you have larger population coming out of the north and wanting to live here in what we call the south of the Rhine.
I noticed you referred to as Kenora as the south, but yes. We're going to take a short break and then we'll continue with some of the other changes. Please join us again in a few minutes. Welcome back to Sitting with Sallie. I have with me today Bob Nault, who is our Minister of Parliament. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And you were mentioning different things that are happening. One of the things I'm curious about is the twinning of the highways. I know that's been a big issue.
Well, one of the things we, as you're saying, twinning of the highway from Falcon Lake to Kenora is absolutely critical to the economic development of the region and, of course, the health and safety of people who travel the roads on a fairly regular basis. So, yes, we are still working on the twinning of the highway. Have been in communications with the Minister of Transport provincially, Mr. Del Duca, and so Stephen and I have agreed with the chiefs, the 5 communities that are, this is their traditional territory, to get a meeting set up, and that should happen any day now. And the objective of that exercise is to put together a work plan and start developing the abilities for us to get to a point where we can build this road and twin it and do it in an environmentally friendly way and meet the needs of obviously the North, but First Nations as well.
Yeah. I imagine it's much more complicated than Falcon Lake because of rocks and lakes and muskeg. And are you involved at all with the road coming out of Shoal Lake?
Yes, of course. Have been involved in that for about 30 years since I started. So very pleased that that's been confirmed and announced. The Government of Canada has agreed to finance the majority of it. The province of Manitoba, City of Winnipeg are putting in some funding. And we've also agreed to start to phase this in as quickly as possible. So you'll see some benefits of that work as early as this summer, because as I understand, the engineering is all completed. It's now just a matter of getting the contractors signed on and get to work with it.
Not too soon from the residents of Shoal Lake, I'm sure, but good. It's good to hear. Part of the things that you've discussed in your news release is poverty reduction, and that's something I'm very interested in.
Well, poverty reduction takes many forms, but one of the areas that we think makes sense is the whole idea of housing and affordable housing. So the Government of Canada made a strong commitment to get back into, as a federal government, in partnership with the province and the municipalities and the First Nations, on affordable housing and seniors housing and housing dealing with, for example, transitional housing, homeless shelters. All that is within a matter of days of being started, as far as the strategy being laid out by the minister in charge of housing.
And that's something the federal government has been out of for many years. Yes,
I think the federal government stopped being involved in housing at least a decade or so ago. So to come back in is a recognition that that poverty is something that we can eradicate and have to have solutions to it. One other issue is that we are looking at the whole issue of a guaranteed annual income as potentially a way of dealing with poverty here in Canada. So that analysis and work is being done by the Minister of Housing, and sometime in the not too distant future, I hope we'll see a report that sort of gives us the number crunching and the philosophy and the recommendations.
I think the provincial government is doing a pilot project on that moving forward.
That's right. There are many governments who have the view that this is potentially one of the solutions, and it's also a solution for dealing with job loss vis-a-vis technology, because technology is moving so fast. And there's many predictions, dire predictions, unfortunately, of what will happen if the whole issue of technology keeps moving at the pace it's moving. So we need to keep up with that, with the kind of programs and strategy that makes some sense. So that is sort of our answer for now on the poverty side, with a lot of other work to be done with the other levels of government.
And for many people, guaranteed income raises kind of a scary aspect, but I think of old age security is guaranteed income for seniors. And it was introduced at a time to help women who maybe hadn't worked in the workforce, to lift them out of, senior women, to lift them out of poverty, and it's been very successful.
Well, there are many economists and social scientists who say that this is not necessarily a more expensive way of proceeding, but it's the concern that people have is the whole disincentive to work, and so there has to be some sort of connection with the two, and I think that's the work that needs to be done. I don't think it's any more expensive, Sallie, so I think we need to figure out how we'll approach that.
That will take a few years, I imagine. What, in being back in the Kenora district as the MP, what are some of the things that you've enjoyed in your work?
Well, I think any member of Parliament who's been at it 18 years, which I'm on now, has to like the people and the challenge of trying to resolve long-standing issues. The North has always had an infrastructure deficit and is in need of developing, more all-weather roads, grids, twinning of the highway, things that are obvious if we're going to progress economically. We also, of course, as you know, the challenge of healthcare. I find that to be a major challenge and one that keeps me motivated every day. And there's lots of economic opportunity that's out there that we're working on. There's a number of major potentially new mines that are being looked at in partnership with First Nations here in the Kenora area and in the Sioux Lookout area. So economically, we need to continue to progress as well. So those are some of the reasons why, obviously, I'm back and enjoying it. But I think the key is, funny enough, sometimes just resolving individual issues for your constituents can be a real high of its own, because you manage to deal with the bureaucracy and resolve an issue that meant something to somebody. So dealing with individual constituency issues, I think I enjoy that a lot, and always have, I think.
And economically, I think things have changed since the last time you were MP, in that not only in Kenora the mills have closed, but the mills have closed or been reduced right across northwest Ontario. So it's a different kind of economy. We aren't, while resources are still important, Kenora especially isn't relying just on resources as it did once.
No, and that relates to sort of my comments earlier about the economy is moving so quickly, and the need for innovation and a new innovation strategy. In the next budget, you're going to see a significant part of the budget relate to job creation through innovation. And in Northern Ontario, well, what does that mean? Well, it means if we're not going to make paper with our fiber, then we're going to make something else with our fiber that the world needs. So we can use our wood products and create wood products for a next generation. And we're not going to just rely on sawmills. And when I first started, my region had three pulp and paper mills. We are now, in essence, down to half of one in Dryden, and so Fort Francis, that we used to represent in Kenora, no longer exists. So that's an indication that things are changing, and the economy has to change with it. And we have to create jobs, good-paying jobs with good benefits. And I think there's the challenge, because in the last 20 years, I've noticed this push in the private sector in particular not to have benefits for workers. And we need to turn that around, because if we want Canadians to feel secure and be secure about their government and their lifestyle, they need to know that they have those benefits, not only Canada Pension from the Government of Canada that Canadians have earned, but also benefits like their own pensions, like that our fathers and mothers were used to in the previous generation. So that's the important work that this government needs to do, and you'll see a big discussion about that in the next budget.
Okay, thank you. We're going to take another short break, and we will be right back to finish our discussion. Welcome back to Sitting with Sallie. I have with me Bob Nault, the MP for the Kenora riding, and during the break we were talking about changes to childcare benefits that happened about a year ago, I guess.
During the campaign, Prime Minister Trudeau made the argument then and continues to, that one way to help the middle class and those who are working hard to get it and get to the middle class was to have a national child benefit that made a difference in people's lives. So we rolled in all the different child care programs that the previous government had that were taxable, made them non-taxable, and so 9 out of 10 families now will get more benefits than they did under the older system. But in our region, we'll get a disproportionate amount because we have a lot of kids and a lot of families who are living in poverty and working hard to get beyond that. And so we'll expect that most families of 4 will get an extra $2,500 at least on average. And this will make a bit of a difference in families buying clothes, getting ready for school, obviously daycare if it's necessary. So we think this is an important program that'll make a difference. And we also think it'll help stimulate the economy, because when you put some $18 billion into play, tax-free, it makes a big difference just
it's
in
going
the
to be
economy.
spent.
Sure,
Yes.
it will. It will be
And
spent.
you also, the government also made changes to improve the EI employment insurance benefits about the same time.
Yes, we're working hard to deal with the EI improvements. One of the things that we're doing with the EI is we've reduced the time amount that before
The number of hours you need.
a number of hours you need before you can claim. And we've also reduced the waiting period from 2 weeks to 1 week, with the idea that it made no sense that with technology today, and the real reason there was a 2-week waiting period originally was you did everything by cards and by mail, and so it took 2 weeks to get your program going. Now you can do it literally within a matter of minutes, and so there's only a 1-week waiting period for people to get their benefits. So we're hoping with the extended time in the north, people will get more benefits, because our unemployment rate, unfortunately, here in the north is still really high in comparison to the rest of the province.
And a lot of it is seasonal too, so there is probably a higher reliance on employment insurance.
For sure, for sure.
So you've talked about a lot of things that have happened while you've been in. What are you looking forward to?
Well, what I'm looking forward to is getting past the hurdle of the first year of being a majority government, being in government. This is not my first opportunity to be in government, so one thing I do know from experience is that it takes a government a few years to get its feet firmly planted on the ground, to get the programs moving, and there are a major amount of infrastructure initiatives that are going to start coming out here in the region.
A lot of promises made.
And a lot of promises made, so we need to keep them. And so that'll be good for the region. It'll make a difference. It'll stimulate the economy. It'll get a lot more jobs going. And then the work that we're doing on innovation is extremely important, because we need to find new generation jobs for the young people that are coming into the workforce. And so that's really what I'm looking forward to in the next year or so. You'll start to see those kinds of initiatives roll out, and then we can have real conversations about the changes and the successes than just having it in a budget that still hasn't seen the light of day on the ground. And I think people are anxious and looking forward to that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you, Sallie. It's been a great pleasure and first time meeting you.
Yes, I enjoyed our chat.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Sitting with Sallie.